What is up, guys? It's John. I'm out here today holding a tripod. Right behind me is my Harley Davidson motorcycle, and today we're going to talk about how to choose a set of bars for your Harley. Let's get into it. Alright guys, so this how-to video is going to teach you a little bit. If you've never really done aftermarket bars on your Harley, this is going to teach you what you should be looking for and what you should be kind of looking at depending on what you want out of your motorcycle. So this Harley right here, if you've watched my old videos, this is a T-bar setup. It's kind of more of a performance setup, but we're going to go over 3 different kind of aspects of bars that's going to help you pick out whether you want your ape hangers, you want your T-bars, you want your cafe racer, kind of like drag style bars. I'm going to go over all the different aspects of what you're going to want out of those bars and what kind of dimensions you want for the riding that you're going to do. So let's go ahead and hop right into it. Alright, so just to start off, this setup is a 9.5-inch pullback riser with the Lucky Dave's riser bar. The Lucky Dave's riser bar is going to be 29.5 inches wide, 3.5 inches tall, and it's going to have a pullback, which is your wrist angle, where this pulls back from the center clamps of 2.5 inches. The riser, again, is 9.5 inches tall, and the pullback on the riser is 1.5 inches. So if you do the math, my full setup is about 13 inches tall, and it has a pullback of about 4 inches, and again, 29.5 inches wide. So just as kind of a baseline for what you're looking at in this video, I'm 6'1", and these bars sit right about shoulder height, maybe a little bit below, which is right where you want them. All right, now let's talk about how this setup can help you with what you're gonna wanna get on your Harley. All right, so the first and probably most commonly talked about thing when it comes to bars is the bar height. If you've ridden a motorcycle for any length of time, especially if you're doing the club style T-bar, the 2 most common questions you're gonna get are what fairing is that and how tall are your bars? So height is important, but it's not the end all be all when it comes to picking out your bars. So there are 3 main reasons why I think height is important. Number 1 is going to be where your wrists are relative to your shoulders and your heart. Number 2 is going to be your weight distribution on the bike. And number 3 is going to be your center of gravity. So let's talk about those things for a second. When your bars are taller than your heart or your shoulders, these bikes vibrate, and on long rides you're going to start losing feeling in your hands because your circulation is going to come from here downwards, and you're not going to get the full circulation. So it's important to make sure that if you're going for a taller style bar, I wouldn't go taller than your shoulders if you're planning on going on long rides. Another reason why the height is important is because of your weight distribution between your front and your rear tire. So when your hands are up here, you're more leaning back, so you're going to have more weight over your rear tire. If you have like a dirt biking background, you'll know this, because if you sit back on the bike, you'll wheelie, and if you sit on the front, you'll do a burnout. On Harleys, it's the same thing, just to a lesser degree. You'll notice when all the stunt dudes are doing burnouts, they're up over the front of their bike because there's less traction on the rear, and if they want to do wheelies, they're sitting on the back, leaning back. So your bar height has something to do with that. So if your bars are down here, you're more likely to be leaning forward, you've got more weight over the front tire, it's easier to do a burnout, and you've got better traction on the front in the corners. Now, if you're sitting back, you got taller bars, it's going to be a lot easier to do a wheelie. However, when you hit your front brakes, you're going to have a lot more weight transfer to the front of your bike, and you're going to have a little bit less traction on the front wheel in the corners. Now, I'm not saying pick your bar height based on your weight distribution. I'm just saying it's something to keep in mind. When you get different bars, your bike is going to feel different, because you're either going to lose more traction in the rear or you're going to gain traction in the rear. And don't freak out if your front wheel comes up a little bit. That happened a couple times on this bike, and I can do it when I want to do it on purpose, but when you do it on accident, it'll catch you by surprise. So definitely be careful when you're doing that. All right, then the third thing when it comes to height is your center of gravity. So this doesn't really matter as much when you're going above parking lot speeds, but when you put taller bars on your Harley, you're obviously going to be sitting up higher, which raises your center of mass, center of gravity. So when you're in parking lots, your bike is going to feel quite a bit more tippy than it was if you had lower bars on it previously. I think it's a good thing because I like having a bike that'll dip into corners quickly, but it's something to get used to when you do pick your bike or pick your bars for your bike. So if you're going from really, really low bars that come stock on, say, like a Harley Roadster to tall bars, your bike is going to feel like it's heavier, even though it hasn't changed at all. So as far as height goes, keep those things in mind. And a good way to know how tall you should get your bars, at least relative to your shoulders, is you take a broomstick or something flat, you stick it right here, and you have a buddy, a friend, whatever. You get a measuring stick or a ruler, whatever, and you measure how tall that broom is from your top triple tree. And that'll tell you how high you really want your bars, at least when you're comfortable. All right, guys, now the second thing that I want to bring up to you is that the bar width. So there's 3 things to keep in mind when you're looking at different bar widths. It's going to be your wrist angle, what angle your wrists are at when you're grabbing the bar. If they're further out, your wrists are going to be more out. If they're further in, less. Leverage, which is how hard you have to push the bar to turn the bike. And sensitivity. So let's talk about the wrist angle. So these bars are 29.5, and they sit about the same as my shoulders, maybe a little bit less than my shoulders. So my arms are relatively straight. So that means my wrists are going to be straighter than they would be if the bars were wider. So if you have tiny shoulders, I would go for a skinnier, or at least a less wide bar. If you have really, really big shoulders, or you like having your wrists cocked out at a different angle, then go for wider bars. The next thing that I want to talk about is the leverage. So keep in mind that when you do get skinnier bars, it takes more pressure to turn them. You can do this pretty easily, like I guess as an experiment. If you've got apes, it might be a little bit harder, but if you grab the inside of your bars, obviously not while you're riding, but sit in a parking lot, see how much harder it is to push and turn the bars than it is when you go out here. See what I'm saying? So if you have wider bars, it's going to be much easier to turn. If you have skinnier bars, it's going to be a little bit harder to turn. And that's much easier to notice as well when you start going at speed. The faster you go, the harder it is to turn the bars already. So if you have really narrow bars and you're going fast, it's going to be a lot harder to push. Some people might say that's a plus. Some people might say it's a minus. And that brings us into our next topic, which would be the sensitivity of the bars. So if you are somebody that rides really, really fast, you'll notice that wide bars are very sensitive to your inputs. So if you've got really, really wide bars, you can move them just a little bit, just that much, and it moves your bike a lot. Where if you have skinny bars, you can see right here, wide bars, I push, at least the bars move, right? Not a lot, but they're moving. If you've got really skinny bars and you try to push, it doesn't move at all. See what I'm saying with the leverage? So the wider you go, the more sensitive, the more leverage you got. The skinnier you go, the less leverage and less sensitive you have. So keep that in mind as well when you're picking either your your bar, or if you're picking like your ape hangers. This has nothing to do with the riser, just the bar itself. All right, guys, this last view that we're looking at here is just going to be the risers, which is this section from the top of your triple tree to the clamp that you have right here. This is really specific to if you want to do a 2-piece riser bar setup, but it's also something to keep in mind if you want to do a classic T-bar, if you pick the regular straight bar, or if you go for a pullback. So there's a couple things that you want to keep in mind, and I've shown you these angles already, but the pullback does have something to do with your wrist angle. Has something to do with your wrist and your elbow angle. The closer the bars are to you, the more angle you're going to have in your elbows, which will allow you to either press harder or on the bars, or you can lean back further. Where if you don't have angle in your elbows, you're forced to kind of lean further over the tank, which can be a good thing if you want the weight over your front tire, and it can be a bad thing if you want to be comfortable on a long trip. So that also touches on your body position. Again, I talked about that earlier. If you want to be more over your rear tire, and if you want to lean back and be more comfortable on long rides, you should get a bigger pullback in your bar so that you can lean further back on the bike. And if you want to be more in a high performance aggressive riding position, then you definitely should not get a pullback, and you should be sitting straight over the front of your bike. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed my video, and I hope it's going to help you out on what bars that you want to pick out. So I didn't mention any brands because, as you may know, if you're looking at buying Harley Davidson bars, there's literally a billion different bars that you can buy depending on what bike that you have. And then as well, if you do the riser bar setup, you can literally go from Lucky Days bars that are made specifically for Harley, or you could get Renthal bars that are made for dirt bikes as long as you drill the top clamp out to 1 1/8 inch. So There's literally a million different choices. I'm just hoping that my dimensions and that my description of what the different aspects of a bar does as far as height, width, pullback, etc., what that's going to do to change the attitude of the bike and how it's going to help you pick out your bars better. If you have any questions about different kind of Harley Davidson bars, or if you're looking at a different brand or whatever, leave it in the comment section below and I'll try to get back to you and give you some feedback about what I think that might make the bike act or look like. All right, guys, well, thank you so much for watching. Definitely like and subscribe to my channel if you like this kind of content. We're gonna have so much more stuff coming at you about Harley Davidson, so stay tuned.